Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Nana Numa, and I am one of the supervisor professional consultants with NJ4S Essex. We truly appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening. Please note that by attending, your email will be added to our mailing list so you can receive notifications about future webinars. If you would like to opt out, please email us at info@nj4sessex at familyconnectionsnj.org. Tonight's presentation, Teenagers Standing Strong Against Peer Pressure, How to Support Teens in Making Sound Choices, presented by the Partnership to End Addiction, will examine the impact of peer pressure on teenagers and provide practical strategies for parents and caregivers to help teens make healthy, confident decisions. Before we begin, I'd like to turn it over to NJ4S Essex Prevention Consultant Damian Autry, who will provide a brief overview of NJ4S Essex services and the supports available. Damian, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Nana. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming out on this beautiful Wednesday. Before we hop into today's presentation, I just want to introduce myself to you guys. My name is Damian Autry. I am a prevention consultant with NJ4S. NJ4S is a statewide student support service program, and Family Connections is the Essex County hub for NJ4S. I'm here at NJ4S. It's our belief that now more than ever, our students deserve support. And that's why our program focuses on strengthening social, emotional, and mental health for all of our local students, parents, and the whole community at large. We have 50 plus prevention consultants and mental health professionals who are specifically trained in evidence-based practices, but also have lived experience in Essex County's diverse cultures, languages, and communities. And the best part is that this comes completely free. So if you feel like you can benefit from these services, feel free to reach out to us and we are able to implement prevention groups as well as provide mental health counseling. We service all of Essex County, but we do have a distinct focus on our middle and high school students. And one thing that we also love to do with NJ4S is to connect with our community partners, which is why we are bringing this presentation here to you today. So I'm very excited to pass the torch over to our friends at the Partnership to End Addiction. So Cori, you can go ahead and take over from there.
Great. Thanks so much, Damien. And I just wanted to mention at the end, we'll have a question to answer for your chance to win a gift card, right, Damien?
Yes, yes, we will.
So definitely stay tuned for that at the end. But
$50 gift card. Sorry.
oh, that's a good prize. So thanks for the intro, Damien, and thank you everyone for joining this evening. We're going to be talking about peer pressure tonight, which I think is, we all know what peer pressure is, but hopefully I'll provide a little bit more context about it. I'll provide some data about peer pressure, and we'll talk about what we can do to try to keep our teens empowered and safe. If you haven't joined us for one of our webinars before, welcome. My name's Cori Hammond. I'm the Senior Director of Prevention Services at Partnership to End Addiction. We're a national nonprofit, but headquartered in New York City, and we've been working with the fabulous team at NJ4S Essex for a few years now. I'm usually joined by my colleagues, Dr. Linda Richter and Janelle Robinson, but I think tonight it's just me. And so here is what we are going to go over tonight. First, I'm going to talk about teen influence and peer pressure just in general. Then I'll talk about healthy teen friendships, what those look like, and what some red flags are. I'll talk a little bit about resilience because we know that being resilient can help teens stand up in moments of peer pressure. And then I'll talk a lot about what parents and caregivers can do. What are some actionable skills and conversation starters that adults can have to try to build up some of these empowerment skills in their teens? I'll share some resources from Partnership to End Addiction, and we should have time for any questions that you all might have at the end. So as I'm going through all of this, if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat, and I will have some time to get to them at the end. So let's just jump right in. What is teen influence and peer pressure? So the technical definition of peer pressure is just influence from member of one's peer group. And so it's usually meant in a negative context. We usually think about peer pressure where someone's being forced or pressured to do something that they don't want to do. But there is also positive peer pressure. It can go both ways. It's very natural for adolescents to seek out peer acceptance. I'll talk a lot about that. It's not a bad thing to want to be accepted and liked and fit in with your peers. That's a very natural tendency. And it's also very natural for individuals in peer groups to start to act similarly. If you think about your friendships that started maybe when you were in middle or high school, you might think about how you and those friends grew to have similar interests, or maybe you started to like the same types of music, or maybe you liked the same restaurants to go to. Maybe you started to like the same types of art and music. Peers naturally tend to develop in similar ways just by proxy of spending a lot of time together. And so you might notice that your teen might start to adapt some of the similar attitudes and behaviors of their friends. And this is very natural and normal. And peer pressure, it's not just an issue for teens. It's not like once we hit 25 years old, we don't care at all about what the people around us think anymore. Teens have a tendency to be more influenced by their peer and peer dynamics than adults do, but adults are certainly influenced by the people around them as well. But when it comes to the teen brain, the development of the adolescent brain is part of the reason why peer influence feels so powerful. Again, if we think about kind of basic human survival, humans are social creatures, and we always have been. And so social connection is very much a survival level need. The brain is really sensitive to social feedback. It it shapes the way that we behave. A lot of friendships are help us to cope with stress and provide really positive benefits. They help us to build our identity. They help us to grow and develop into functional, good adults. We also know that positive social interactions trigger a dopamine release. If you think about how good it feels to see a good friend, it probably comes as no surprise that that releases dopamine, just like other good, positive, pro-social things that we do. And then the other side of that coin, rejection literally hurts. There's been brain imaging studies that show that social rejection activates the same regions of the brain as physical pain. And so that feeling when you've been rejected or you've been left out of a social situation, it might feel like you're hurt physically because it is triggering that same part of the brain. And so when teens are feeling distressed after experiencing social rejection or after experiencing social conflict, it might be easy to just write that off as being really dramatic. But we know that the teen is experiencing that in a really profound way. And so teens might take risks or change their behavior or change their attitudes about certain things to try to avoid that rejection because that rejection hurts and it feels so awful. And so for teens, fitting in isn't just kind of a fun added bonus for their lives, it feels necessary for their lives. And so adolescents and teens, they aren't just giving in to peer pressure because they're weak. They're very much wired to prioritize social connection and approval. And so the influence of their peers is really intense and it feels really meaningful. And so, social acceptance feels like a reward, and rejection literally feels like pain. Um, and so we need to keep this in mind when we're thinking about teenagers and peer pressure. It's a lot more intense and serious than maybe we've kind of forgotten as we've grown up as adults. There are some misconceptions about peer pressure. I think we can think of a lot of movies that portray teenagers or TV shows that portray teenagers, and they'll often have scenes of peer pressure where an individual or a group is forcing someone to partake in substance use or other risky behavior. It usually will show name calling or threats to reputation as coercion techniques, often a type of kind of a bullying type situation. I'm sure we can all think of TV or movie scenes where kids are together at a party and someone has a marijuana joint or a beer and they say, if you don't take this or if you don't use this, you're a loser and everyone's going to hate you and everyone's going to think you're lame. And so that's like the very stereotypical peer pressure. Actual peer pressure is typically a little bit more subtle and more pervasive. So it's this idea of norms, it's this idea of not wanting to stand out as different. And so it's less commonly that really overt bullying situation, and it's usually a little bit more subtle than that. And so, some of our subtle influences for teenagers, again, are those social norms. The perception that you have of what's normal among your peers, even if it's untrue. We know that teenagers tend to overestimate how many of their peers use substances. Like, there's been studies where they will ask high school seniors, like, how many of the kids at your school drink on the weekends? And teens will say, everybody drinks on the weekends, or they'll say 90% of the school drinks on the weekends, when in actuality, the real number is something like 20% of teens have had a sip of alcohol in the past month. It's so much lower than what they actually believe it to be. And so those social norms are really intense influences. If you think that all of your peers are doing something, you're going to be more likely to do it too. And so that's why we want our norms to be structured in like actual truth, because we don't want kids to be feeling that internal pressure to do something because they think everyone else is doing it. Because in all actuality, not everyone else is usually doing it. We also know that this idea of FOMO is a really subtle influence. So, FOMO is an acronym for fear of missing out. And so, this is an idea that really got popularized on social media, and it's more intense now with social media, where you can see after school and on weekends what your peers are doing, and that feeling of being left out is really intense. And we know that that can be a pressuring force for teens because they know that that feeling really hurts and they don't want that feeling. And so they'll take risks and they'll maybe do things that they wouldn't normally to try to fit in and not miss out. There's also other influences. There's been a lot of interesting research that shows just being in the presence of other teens their age increases the likelihood that a teenager will engage in risky behavior. So we know that being around other kids their own age increases this perceived reward value of risky choices. And this research is part of why driving laws will restrict peers in the car in the first year. I know when I first got my permit at 15 and when I first got my license at 16, I had to have an adult in the car at first. And then right after getting my license, I couldn't have other kids my age in the car for the first 6 months. And the reason for that is because those first 6 months are the riskiest time for driving because you're still kind of learning how to. And this idea that even just having other kids your own age in the car will increase your likelihood to make riskier decisions while driving. And so the way that they proved this in research was kind of interesting. They did driving simulators with teens, and teens were more willing to take risks. They were more willing to speed through yellow lights, not stop at stop signs, all of these risky things if their peers were watching them. And so it didn't even have to be their peers could talk to them. It's not like their peers were egging them on or encouraging them to be risky. Just the fact that their peers were there forced them to make riskier decisions. And so just knowing that your friends are watching you is enough to make a teen behave less responsibly. And so, really, what this comes down to is if we think back to being a teenager, it's this type of balancing. You're balancing trying to be yourself and having a sense of individuality while also trying to fit in and feeling like you belong within a friend group. And so coping well with peer influence and peer pressure is all about getting this balance right. And it's hard. And so whatever we can do to try to help kids in this way, we really want to do. So it's all about getting the balance right between being yourself and trying to fit in with your group. And you can find a nice balance here where you feel like you belong with your peers, but you also have a sense of individuality and you have your own values and beliefs. So let's talk a little bit about healthy teen friendships. The reality of teen peer influence, there's good news and there's bad news here. The bad news is that teens whose friends use substances or experiment with other risky behavior are more likely to try those things too. If you're a teenager and your friends smoke marijuana, you're more likely to try marijuana. I feel like that makes probably logical sense to us all. But the good news is that most teens say that they don't feel pressured by their friends to use substances. Friends are more likely to support each other in making good choices rather than pushing each other towards risky behaviors. And so this is good news. I think a lot of times we think of peer pressure as this really negative influence all the time that teens are fighting against. But for the most part, teens have um, friends who support them in making healthy decisions, which is something that we should keep in mind. This was a study done by Partnership to End Addiction a few years ago in 2018, and they asked teens how many of your close friends engage in substance use. And so, of the teens that they surveyed, about 33% said that they have at least a few close friends who have used beer before. About 30% said that they have close friends that have used cigarettes. Um, Almost 30% say they have a few close friends who use marijuana. About 30% said that they have a few close friends that use e-cigarettes or vapes. And less than 10% said they have a few close friends who use prescription drugs. Um, and so some of these numbers are kind of high, about 30% of teens say that they have friends that use marijuana. But I'm sure if we had asked parents to guess what these numbers might be, they probably would have estimated a lot higher. We also know that having friends who use substances will influence teens' intentions on whether or not they're going to try substances in the future. So, again, this same survey of teens who said that I have at least one friend who uses drugs, almost 83% of them said that they have intentions to try drugs in the future. Whereas of those teens who said, I don't really have any friends who use drugs, only 46% of those say that they might be tempted to try drugs in the future. So it does make a big difference for someone's intentions to use. Overall, teens with at least one friend who used substances have 5.5 times higher odds of reporting that they are intending to try nicotine, alcohol, or other drugs in the future, relative to those who don't have friends who use substances. So, on the other side of that coin, we know that most teen friendships are healthy teen friendships, and there's a lot of benefits to that. I'm sure this comes as no surprise, but healthy teen friendships can provide a lot of emotional support. They can help teens handle stress and difficult emotions. They can be a positive motivating factor, encouraging them to do well in sports and school and other activities. Having friendships helps to practice your social skills so you can learn important skills like cooperation and how to resolve conflicts and feeling empathy for another person. And they can also give you a sense of belonging. So we know that having a friend group where they feel accepted helps to meet a lot of important emotional needs that teenagers have. On the other side, there are some warning signs in peer relationships that might be kind of a red flag to say this friendship might be unhealthy or there might be some unsafe influences going on here. So we want to be on the lookout for sudden changes in behavior. So if a teen is becoming a lot more withdrawn or breaking rules, if they're starting to be really secretive about who their friends are, about who they're hanging out with or what they're doing and where they're going, if their academics start to decline, so if the grades start to slip, if their attitudes really start to change, if you notice that their values or just the words that they're using or their attitude is different, and definitely if there's any signs of substance use, we want that to be a red flag for us that we're on the lookout for. So, what can we do to try to reduce the impact of negative teen influences? An important part of that is resilience. If you've been to some of my webinars before, you know I talk about resilience a lot. So, resilience is this idea of being able to bounce back from adversity that happens in your life. The words in red here are often what people use to define resilience, but it doesn't get at the whole picture. So it's not just being positive in times of stress. It's not just having, sorry, I'm getting an echo if someone could mute themselves. Um, if it's not just grit and it's not just strength, it's a lot more than that. So it's being able to be adaptable. It's a whole host of skills that help someone to stand up to adversity and bounce back. And so it's a crucial set of abilities that are needed to rebound from challenging experiences. And so having a sense of resiliency can help teens make safer, healthier decisions by giving them emotional regulation. It gives them flexibility and adaptability. They can solve problems on their own, and it gives them this sense of social support. And resilience is very much a skill. It's a dynamic process that can change over time. It's a lot of skills that we can teach teens. You know, it's not just your teen is resilient or they're not. You know, this is stuff that we can practice and learn and improve. So teens need resilience to be able to navigate peer influences. We want them to be able to cope with difficult situations and stay true to themselves. If our website is drugfree.org, and on that website we have a parent's guide to raising resilient kids. If you want to read a little bit more about resiliency and some parenting techniques that you can use to build resilience in kids, this is a really great resource. So, what else can parents and caregivers do? Part of it is to provide guidance without being too controlling. We want to help teens recognize how their friends influence each other, and we want to ask some questions that can prompt some critical thinking on their part. So, we don't want to be too judgmental and immediately jump to conclusions about friends and start to badmouth those friends because that can really put kids on the defensive and they might be less likely to open up and really talk about what's going on. So questions like, how do you feel when you're with those friends? Or what do you think about how your friend treated that person? If there was an incident at school, what do you think about how your friend treated that teacher in class? You know, getting to the meat of how these friends influence each other. You can discuss peer pressure situations before they happen. A lot of what I'll talk about is parents practicing and role playing with their kids to try to practice how they can be strong and make good decisions in tense moments. And so you can teach and practice ways to resist substance use and other risky behaviors. Again, we want to observe friend groups over time rather than making quick judgments. We know that teens are in a state of flux. You know, they're trying to figure out who they are. They're under a lot of stress and pressure. We don't want to immediately write off someone as a bad kid or a bad friend. We want to observe over time rather than coming to really quick judgments. And so try to focus on concerning behaviors rather than labeling certain friends as bad. Because again, it might cause your teen to become defensive and not want to talk to you about that friend if they feel like you're jumping to conclusions or being quick to judge. And so it's really important, if possible, to try to get to know your child's friends. And so some different ways to do that are first, you could try to create a welcoming home environment so that they want to hang out at your home where you can keep an eye on things. And so maybe that's being the home with the good snacks or being the home with the nice hangout space. And being friendly, but not super intrusive when kids come over. And so, if your space is the gathering spot, you can observe what's going on and see what these friends are like together. You could also offer to host meals or activities. You know, it doesn't have to be a super fancy affair that costs a lot of money, but just being the one to, um, you know, where they feel like they can stop by and talk to you and you can get to know them a little bit better. It's also nice to engage in genuine conversation with your kids' friends. When friends are over, you can ask them questions about their interests and their activities and their opinions. Just seem like you're interested, not that you're grilling them and interviewing them, but just some genuine interest uh, in the things that they like. If possible, you can attend school or community events to see, go to their games if they're athletes, go to the plays that they're in, kind of see what everyone's up to. Connect with other parents if it's possible to introduce yourself to your kids' friends' parents, then you can kind of coordinate together. And also monitor and check in about online friendships. We know that a lot of kids spend a lot of time on social media these days and might have online friendships. And so we don't want to think about peer pressure and peer influence only existing in person. There is the potential for peer influence online. And so we want to, especially in kind of a video game situation where there's a lot of interaction with people maybe from all over the world. If there are gamer friends, definitely want to make sure that we're checking in and know the status of those friendships. And it's really about building open communication. We want to ask open-ended, non-judgmental questions so that our teens feel like they can talk to us and they can trust us and they're not going to be judged or shamed. So instead of asking, like, do you think Jordan's a good influence? Maybe you could ask, like, what do you like about hanging out with Jordan? What types of stuff do you like to do together? What's fun about him? And really kind of get at that information in a nicer, less judgmental way. And really, you can use I statements as a way to not seem judgmental or shameful. So you could say things like, I noticed that your grades have changed since you started hanging out with this new group. I'm wondering if there's a connection, rather than, again, jumping to conclusions and saying those new friends are ruining your grades. Maybe there's something else going on in addition to this new friend group that could be the reason why grades are slipping. We just want to leave the door open so that teens can have a really heartfelt and open conversation. We want to set clear expectations around substance use and risky behaviors, so definitely discuss what you expect and your standards regarding substance use early and often, not just when you think friends might be starting to use substances. And so we want to make sure that teens know what the rules are about supervision, curfews, and check-ins, and really explain the reasons behind those rules, not just because I said so, but you can say things like, I set this curfew because I worry about driving late at night, or I ask you to text me where you're going because I care about your well-being and I want to make sure you're safe. We want to be consistent with consequences. Be sure to follow through on any consequences that you set and set really realistic consequences. We don't want to say you're going to be grounded for 2 years. It's unlikely that you're going to stick with that, and it's not really a realistic expectation. And revisit and adjust rules as teens grow up and get more responsible. It's important to remember as we're talking about all of this that not using substances is the norm for teenagers these days. As of last year, 73% of eighth graders, over 60% of 10th graders, and 41% of high school seniors said that they had never tried any substances before. And so that's really hopeful and encouraging. And so when we're talking about positive friendships and positive influence and positive relationships, it's the norm. Most kids are not being pressured by their friends to use drugs, and so we really want to make sure that teens are aware of this norm and make sure that the parents are too. This graph here is showing non-use by high school seniors over decades. The data is starting in 1976. And at that point, less than 10% of high school seniors had not used any substance. Almost 100% of seniors had used drugs before. Whereas now, that number has steadily increased over the years to the point where over 40% say that they've never tried any drugs, which is really great news. And normalizing this is so important. But if your child's friends are using substances, what can you do? First things first, we want to stay calm and avoid panicking or making accusations because that's going to make a conversation difficult. We want to have a thoughtful conversation where you can express your specific concerns, you can listen and understand your team's perspective, and again, really try to avoid criticizing their friends directly because that might cause them to be defensive. We want to set appropriate boundaries. So if they are using substances and you know about it, you limit unsupervised time with the peers that you know are using substances and be really clear about what the consequences are for breaking those rules. And have your clear expectations about where they're going and with who and when they're going to check in. And again, try to create alternatives. You don't have to ban them from hanging out with these friends forever, but maybe you offer activities at your home where you can supervise. Or maybe you encourage involvement in healthy and other structured activities where you know substances aren't going to be a part of it. We also want to build realistic refusal skills. You know, in a perfect world, it would be super easy for all teens to stand up in a moment of temptation and say, I'm not going to use drugs because my mom told me not to. But like, we know that's not realistic, and most kids aren't going to say that. And so we want to build and practice realistic refusal. So if in a peer pressure situation, if someone says, come on, just have one pill, you know, it'll help you relax, then we can teach our kids to say something like, you know, I know you might think that, but I have anxiety or depression or ADHD, whatever it is. And I've heard that it only makes it worse for me. And there's other things that are going to work better for me. That's a really realistic and true refusal skill. And if someone offering them a substance is their actual friend, they're going to take that and they're going to react in a nice way, hopefully. If someone says, you know, it might help you feel better, it's really no big deal, then someone can say, you know, I'm really focused on keeping my mind and my body healthy, especially with everything I'm dealing with. So I'm choosing just to steer clear of it. Again, a really realistic way to refuse substances. Um, and if someone says, you know, just try a little, it's fun and we're all doing it, then someone can say, you know, I get that, but my mental health is something that I take really seriously. I know substances can mess with that. And so this is just a personal choice that I'm making. Again, very realistic refusal skills. A lot of them focus on mental health. I think that's something that really resonates with teens these days. They care about their mental health. They don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize their mental health. And so using that as their refusal can really be a successful and easy way to do it. We also want teens to feel empowered in themselves. And so part of doing that, you know, teens who feel empowered in themselves and confident in their own beliefs will be better prepared to ward off the negative influences that others might try to have on them. And so the first thing that we can do is give our kids a voice. This is really key to developing confident children. So encouraging your kids to make decisions for themselves, even for really small things, can be helpful. So this could mean when they're small, you know, asking them what color cup they want to drink out of that morning, or they get to pick out their outfit for the day when they're little. When they get older, they choose what classes they're going to take that semester, you know, making them feel confident in the choices and the decisions that they make. We want to discourage prejudice and gender stereotyping. You know, we want kids to believe that they can be anything that they want to be and achieve anything that they want to desire. And so dismantling stereotypes about girls and boys can be helpful along that journey. We want to listen and engage with them. We want to, you know, ask them about their perspectives and their feelings and really show genuine interest in what they feel. We want to trust and support them. And we want to encourage individuality whenever possible. You know, letting kids explore different interests is how they're going to know what's important to them and help them to build up their own values and beliefs. And so supporting them in their passions and trying to maybe get rid of the expectations that we had for our kids can be really helpful in empowering them. Other things that adults can do to help teens feel empowered, we can build their internal confidence. So you can shift from trying to control their actions to helping to coach them through things by asking, if they make a specific decision or if something happened, asking, what do you think about that? And being actually curious as to what they think. You can validate before correcting negative behaviors. You can say, I totally get why you would think or do that, but here's why we're going to do this other thing instead. And you can normalize discomfort. Being really honest about peer influences and how tough it is to make these decisions. It can actually be really hard to say no sometimes. It helps you to, as a caregiver, feel like a real human, and it helps your teenager to trust you. And we can also create safe and supportive systems. So, again, trying to resist panic, even in moments that might be kind of panic inducing. We can we can make our support really predictable. A teen knows that when they come to us, we're going to provide them with support. We want to encourage friendships where their boundaries are respected and that their friends are kind and respectful to them. And we want to externalize the pressure. So we don't want to, again, blame specific friends, but talk about negative peer influence as a whole. And so confidence isn't built by telling teens what to do and forcing them to do everything that we say is right, but it's really built by helping them to trust themselves and know that they have your support when things get hard. Part of navigating teen influence and peer pressure is letting teens feel really confident in themselves and their decisions. It can also be helpful to do some safety planning. So, even before your child or your teen is ever in a risky situation, we want them to know that they can contact you for backup and you will help get them out of any bad situation. You can let them know that they can lie or blame you to get out of any type of situation. If someone is offering them substances, maybe they say, I can't smoke weed. My mom drug tests me and would totally find out. Maybe that's not true. Maybe you're not going to drug test them, but we want them to be able to get out of a situation. And maybe if they can blame you and get out of that situation, that's a good way to do it. And so you can practice or role play these situations so that they can work through what they might say in a way that feels authentic or realistic. We don't want kids to be in a situation where someone offers them a substance for the first time and they panic. They have no idea what they're supposed to say. They don't want to, but they don't know how to get out of it. We want them to feel prepared in these moments and know what they're going to say, know what their reason's going to be, and feel really confident in that decision. And so, we want kids to know that they can get out of any type of risky situation and practice what that's going to look like. And so if your child does contact you in a risky situation, it's okay to be upset that they're in a risky situation, but we want to focus on how important it was and that good choice to call you and ask for help rather than the situation that they're in. And so in that case, they're going to be more likely to ask for help again if they know that they're not going to get in trouble and that their parent is going to support them and help them get out of a bad situation. It's also important to remember that your influence matters too. As teens get older, you may feel like your influence is really dwindling and you may feel like they care only about what their friends think. But caregivers remain the most important influence in a teen's life. There's been decades of data that shows that teens say, my parents, my caregivers, my grandparents, they are the biggest influence on whether or not I'm going to try substances. And we know that research shows that teens whose parents talk to them regularly about nicotine, alcohol, and other drugs are less likely to use those substances. And so it might not always seem like it, but those parents and caregivers are the most important influence on a kid's life. And so by staying involved, by observing what they're going through, communicating openly, setting good boundaries, we can really help teens navigate their peer friendships and their relationships in a way that is going to set them up for success in the future. And we can also expand this circle of protection. We want kids to know that there's a lot of trusted adults in their life. It might be parents, but it might be grandparents. It might be their mentor at school, their coach at school. It might be their NJ4S consultant who comes in and does their EBPs with them. You know, there's a lot of adults in their lives that care about them and want to help them. And so quickly, I'm going to go through some of Partnership to End Addiction's resources. Again, these are all available for free on drugfree.org. We have a lot of articles and resources about peer pressure and teen influences. So we have a parent's guide to healthy friendships and substance use prevention. If you want to download some of this or read through some of it more on your own, highly encourage you to look into those. I know I mentioned the Raising Resilient Kids resources, but we have webinars, we have the guide that you can download, and we also have a text messaging program. So if you're interested in getting some strategies about raising resilient kids sent to your phone, you can join our Help and Hope program and get text messages sent to your phone about that. We have playbooks for parents. So we have playbooks for preteens as well as teens. These have conversation starters. These have ways to have difficult conversations with kids and try to navigate some of the more difficult parts of parenting teens and preteens. We also have a parenting skills course on our website. Again, this is totally free. You could pick and choose what modules are most interesting or relevant for you, but there's a lot of really good lessons on this about how to um, like, how do I talk so my kid's gonna listen to me? How do I encourage healthier behaviors in my kid? How do I set good consequences? All of these are modules as part of this parenting skills course. And also, we have direct one-on-one support for parents and caregivers. So we have a helpline that you can contact either via text, email, or phone. And we have coaching and community groups and a lot of resources on our website. And so here is my email up here at the top. After we're done here, if you realize that you have a question that you didn't get to answer, or you want a specific resource that I can help point you to, please feel free to reach out to me as always. And so I know I sped through that kind of fast, but we do have time for questions if there are any. And then I also let me check the chat and see if there's any questions. Oh, I see Tess. That is a really good question. Extreme cases where the parent is maybe the bad influence. Um, you're right, that is more difficult to tackle. You know, we want the parents to be the good influences and think that maybe the teens are the bad influence. And so in that kind of situation, we would want that kid and their friends to really lean into other trusted adults. And we would want to lean on protective factors. So if they have teachers at school or coaches or anybody else in the community that can kind of offset that negative influence of the parent, that's ideal. And also, you know, it's not. Um, Depending on where that parent is in kind of their own journey, it's not set in stone that people don't want to get help. You know, even if someone is using substances, um, there's a lot that family members and partners and things can do to help someone see that they might need treatment. And so at that point, you know, we would want the teen to know that it's okay to reach out for help, and there's a lot that the community can do to kind of rally around teens in those situations. But you're right, that is a more difficult situation because we want teens to be able to trust and look up to their parents. And when that is the bad influence, that is really difficult. And so if there's not any more questions, Damien, I guess I'll ask our question for the gift card.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll ask my question, and the first person to put the correct answer in the chat is going to get our gift card. And so here's the question. The question is, true or false? Peer pressure is only ever a bad influence on a young person. Jasmine was quick with it. False. That's correct.
Shout out to Jasmine. Okay, so Jasmine, once we end this, if you don't mind staying a little bit longer just so that I can get your information so we can send you over the $50 gift card.
But that is it for us this evening. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining.
For everyone else, thank you so much for joining. Have a good one. Jasmine, please stay on just for a few. One second.